Hello dear students, I am Dadajanova A.K, teacher at the National University of Uzbekistan, Foreign Philology faculty. So this video lesson is done for first year students to develop their grammar skills. So let's get started. Today we are going to speak about gradable and non-gradable adjectives. So gradable and non-gradable adjectives. As you already know, adjectives describe qualities of noun. Most adjectives have a meaning which can be made stronger or weaker. These kind of adjectives are called gradable adjectives. For example, rather hot, hot, very hot, hotter, or the hottest. As you see, here we can make these adjectives stronger or weaker. So these kind of adjectives are called gradable adjectives. So other adjectives have a meaning which is extremely or absolute and cannot easily be made stronger or weaker. So these kind of adjectives we call non-gradable adjectives, like freezing, dead, unique. Not all adjectives can be used with all adverbs, as adverbs can also be divided into gradable and non-gradable adverbs. So don't try to learn list of gradable and non-gradable adjectives because even native speakers, they don't know which adjective is whether gradable or non-gradable. So gradable and non-gradable adjectives. So here in this scale, I have chosen some adjectives that can be gradable and non-gradable. Ungradable adjective, as I have already told, limit of the scale. For example, freezing. So gradable adjectives can be cheap. For example, it's very cheap, not very cheap. It's expensive, not so expensive. And boiling, priceless. So these kind of adjectives are non-gradable or ungradable adjectives. So we can make comparative and superlative forms, all gradable adjectives. For example, it's expensive, more expensive, less expensive. So however, ungradable adjectives are not usually used in comparative and superlative forms. So ungradable. Non-gradable adjectives. Look at this example. So the Ming vases are more priceless than the Egyptian mummies. So this is wrong because here we have to use, instead of more priceless, just the word priceless because it is non-gradable adjective. The Ming vases are priceless than Egyptian mummies. So even when we are comparing, we cannot use comparative form of this adjective because it's non-gradable adjective. So in this example, in this slide, you can see some example of grading adverbs and gradable adjectives. So a bit, dreadfully, extremely, hugely, very, somewhat. So they are grading adverbs. So gradable adjectives that we can use with grading adverbs are angry, big, busy, clever, common, deep, fast, friendly, happy, important, low, popular, quiet, rich, strong, weak, and young. So ungradable adjectives describe qualities that cannot vary intensely or grade because they are extremes, absolutes, or classifiers, freezing, dead, or nuclear. So ungradable adjectives are not used with adverbs such as very or extremely because they are grading adverbs. We have to use with non-gradable, ungradable adjectives, non-grading adverbs. So let's look at them. So absolutely, completely, entirely, perfectly, practically, simply, totally, and so on. In this slide, all of them are given. So now let's look at non-gradable adjectives. Awful, excellent, huge, impossible, superb, and many others. So both grading and non-grading adverbs. So as you see here, fairly, really, and pretty can be both gradable and non-grading adverbs. For example, let's look at these examples. So she's fairly popular at school. It was fairly awful film. Fairly popular, it means she was little bit popular than others. So here, fairly is grading adverb. It was fairly awful film. In this example, it is non-grading adverb. However, notice that we do not generally use fairly with gradable adjectives such as perfect, superb, or wonderful, which indicates that something is very good or necessary. So the next, some adjectives are both gradable and non-gradable senses. Some adjectives, civil, clean, critical, electric, empty, false, late, odd, original, particular, straight, and others, have different sense when they are gradable and when they are ungradable. So this house is very old, existed many years, so very old here is gradable. I met my old politics professor yesterday. It is ungradable, just former professor. So Smith is a very common name, so frequently found. It is a gradable adjective, so we have a lot of common interests. It is shared interests, so it is non-gradable. So some adjectives have similar meaning when they are gradable and also non-gradable. However, when they are gradable, we talk about the quality that a person or thing has. And when they are non-gradable, we talk about the category or type they belong to. For example, they had a very public argument. So it is gradable in this example. He was forced to resign by public pressure. So here the example is non-gradable. Now, as you see here, I have prepared for you 20 adjectives. So your task is to write it in correct column. So in each column you have to write per 10 adjectives, gradable and non-gradable adjective. So you have a little time to do it. So now let's check whether you were right or not. As you see, here attractive, cold, exciting, expensive, good, ugly, interesting, large, shy, and sick. These are 10 gradable adjectives. Now let's look at non-gradable adjectives, where you're right or not. Amazing, correct, dead, enormous, extinct, fascinating, freezing, huge, minute, paralyzed. So now here is the second task for you. So here use the adverbs below to rewrite each sentence, making it either stronger or weaker. It is written and you have to use this word only once. So virtually, very, somewhat, a bit, highly, absolutely, fabulously, and fairy. So let's look at. Okay, these days mobile phones are fairly cheap. Fairly here is this example of pretty cheap, weaker. So be careful changing gear, the joystick a bit stiff. So the inscription on the tomb was virtually unreadable. Many of the Inca religion ceremonies were somewhat bloodthirsty. Next, Jane was absolutely freezing last night. So this new computer game sounds very interesting. Hillary's new boyfriend is fabulously rich. Victory in our next game seems highly unlikely. Now the next task. You have to find 5 mistakes. So as you see in this example, 5 correct and 5 wrong answers are given. So I hope that you were right. This is the home task for the next lesson. Thank you for your attention. Goodbye. See you in my next lessons.